All right, so we do have General Counsel a quorum, correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, you do have a quorum.
Very good. Well, good morning, everyone. This is a first for us, perhaps. I don't know, Jake. Is this a first?
It's a first for me.
All right. So with that, I'm calling to order the March 2020 meeting of the IHCDA Board of Directors. We are meeting telephonically today pursuant to the current health emergency and the Governor's Executive Orders 20-4 and 20-09. Since we are meeting telephonically, the procedures will be a little different from those we use during our regular board meetings. There will not be a video feed, therefore board members will not be able to see each other. There will be an audio feed for the general public so that members of the public can listen to the meeting, and there will be an audio recording posted to the IHCDA's website next month. At the time the motions are being made, each board member that makes a motion must state his or her first and last name for the record. And also what I would like to say is if there are questions that board members have as we move through the meeting, if you would identify yourself before asking a question of the presenter. Is that all right with everyone?
Yes.
Everybody good with that? Okay, perfect. I will now take a roll call of the board members to confirm who is present. And Madam Secretary, can you take the roll?
David, can you do that, please?
I got it. I'll call them off. So we have Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch.
Present.
Andy Place, Senior.
Present.
Thank you. June Midkiff.
Present.
Thank you. Michael Shopmeyer.
Present.
Thank you. Representative of the Treasurer of the State of Indiana's office, I believe Brian Locke is on as today.
Actually, I'm on, Kelly Mitchell.
Oh, you're on as well. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. And Mark Pasquarella.
Present.
Thank you.
Very
All
good.
right. And we know Jacob Sipe is also on the call as well.
Present.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from February 27, 2020 board meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? And if not, if I could entertain a motion for approval. State your name and then your motion, please.
Mark Pasquarella, move to approve.
Is there a
Kelly
second?
Mitchell.
We have a
Kelly Mitchell,
motion and so the motion's been made by Mike Shopmeyer with a second by Treasurer Mitchell. All in favor, say aye.
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 Hi.
Opposed, nay? Great, motion is approved. Please welcome Peter Nelson, who is going to make a recommendation regarding bond volume 4% tax credits for the Briarwood Apartments of Lafayette. Welcome, Peter.
Good morning, board. Hope everyone's staying safe and sane these times. Thank you. I am here this morning to present actually the next two items, but this one, Briarwood Apartments of Lafayette. It is a bond application that we received during the 2019 round. It is the 13th application we received. The total development cost of this is $10,487,977, and they are requesting $6,650,000 in bond volume, along with $341,892 in LIHTC annually for 10 years, preserving 100 units of affordable housing. So this is a rehab of a property in the Gene B. Glick portfolio. The board may remember the past couple of months, I believe, we've approved some G&B Glick projects. So they are converting some of their older stock in their portfolio, keeping it affordable for all of their residents. This project contains a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. Full rehab scope of work includes new roofs, exterior doors, windows. Interior includes new cabinets, vanities, appliances, and fixtures, as well as replacements of major systems such as the HVAC. This is actually in a really good spot in Lafayette. It's kind of hard to find some rehab projects that come in with so many amenities nearby, but this one has several restaurants. It's very close to a highway, pharmacies and retail shops all along, and a local YMCA isn't too far away. So this project came in and met the criteria under the 2020-2021 Qualified Allocation Plan, and they were able to meet with the real estate and executive staff on March 3rd this year to present the project to us. With that, staff is recommending the full allocation of bond volume and tax credits for this project. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take any.
Are there any questions for Peter? Peter, we're ready for your resolution.
Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve awarding $6,650,000 in bond volume and $341,892 in annual LIHTC to Glick Briarwood Lafayette LP for Briarwood Apartments of Lafayette, according to the terms of the 2019 AB application round as recommended by staff.
Board, we have a resolution before us. I will entertain a motion. Please state your name before the motion.
Andy Place, motion for approval.
Mitchell, second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Peter. And now Peter also has a recommendation regarding bond volume 4% tax credits, McCormick Place. Peter.
Yes, thank you. McCormick Place also came in the 2019 bond round. It's the 5th application we received, and it represents a total development cost of just over $20 million. They are requesting $10.5 million in bond volume and $704,061 in LIHTC, preserving 94 units of affordable housing. This project is a partnership between the Fort Wayne Housing Authority and Bear Development. It is a rehab of public housing for families in Fort Wayne. The project contains 24 different buildings on a single site, containing 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units, so a nice mix for the families, all types. The scope of rehab is an absolute kind of redo of the property. It certainly needs a lot of work. So roofs, gutters, HVAC, windows, doors, facade improvements, new cabinets, fixtures in the bathrooms and kitchens, and all new appliances for the project. This project is adjacent to a bus stop and also kind of within close range to grocery stores, schools, parks. So when everybody can get back outside again, they'll have quick access to all the things that make a great community. This project also met the criteria in the 2020-2021 QAP, and the team for this was able to meet with us on March 11th to present the project to real estate and development staffs, or real estate and executive staffs, excuse me. So with that, we're also happy to recommend the full allocation of bond volume and tax credits for this project, and I'm willing to take any questions.
Or do you
Peter,
have any
Andy
questions
Place. Sorry. Lieutenant Governor.
Go ahead.
Peter, is this project occupied at the present time?
It is. So part of our review, Andy, is when a project is occupied for rehab, we want to know kind of what the rehab plan is looking like, and we want to know kind of a relocation plan. One, for any rehab that's going to happen, anybody that's relocated while the rehab is happening, and also anyone that may be displaced because they may not meet the current income limits, or I guess the new income limits for the tax credit requirements. Fortunately, this project has Section 8 vouchers, so everybody's kind of at that lower level, so they'll all meet the tax credit limits and be able to remain. And for this project, they're doing kind of a rehab in place, so they'll just move them to a different unit within the property. And I guess as kind of people have left, they've kind of held like a small chunk of units open, just so they'll have that maneuverability for the tenants that are currently in place while they're doing the rehab.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Any additional questions for Peter? Peter, we're ready for your resolution.
Great. Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve awarding $10,500,000 in bond volume and $704,061 in annual LIHTC to McCormick Rehabilitation LLC or McCormick Place according to the terms of the 2019 AB application round as recommended by staff.
Mike Schotmeyer, so moved.
Andy Place, second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Please welcome Jerry Bain to discuss an additional funding request for the Fresh Start facilities in Columbus and Evansville. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you. Good morning. The board might remember that in 2017, a loan of $815,000 was approved for Winchester, for the Winchester House facility. And then in 2018, the board approved $1 million each for Columbus and Evansville for their Fresh Start facilities. The original intent was for us to provide a total of $3 million to develop these 3 Fresh Start facilities. The current request is for an additional $185,000, which would then total $3 million for the 3 facilities, and it will be split between Evansville and Columbus due to cost overruns. I provided some detail about the issues they encountered that caused these cost overruns. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Lord, are there any questions for Jerry?
Do we have any? It's Andy Place. Do we have any statistics on how this is going on any of the 3?
Yes, in the key performance indicators towards the bottom of this memo, the Evansville facility only opened in August of last year, but 53% of the clients they have served in the 3 locations that are open, including Indianapolis, 53% were successfully discharged.
What happened to the other 47%?
Those are people who either leave voluntarily or they don't follow the treatment plan.
And is that a kind of a normal metric in relation to other projects that have been done across the country in this space?
I don't have an answer to that, but I will get one for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've had that conversations come up in terms of that 53%. We have been told that that number is actually high. we can get the specific percentage related to treatment programs similar to Fresh Start, which Fresh Start is a little bit unique because it is for pregnant women or have children. However, we have been, if you look at the actual national numbers, I believe those are a lot less in terms of a success rate. But we can get you some specific numbers in terms of success rates and where the median would be. But we've been told that that's a higher number related to similar programs.
Thank you. If you could get those numbers to the board, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
And I apologize. This is Jake's side.
Any
This is
additional
Mark
questions for Jerry?
Pascal. It's Mark Pascal. I assume there are no warranties when they purchase this or anything like that? Because it
No,
looks like
there
a lot
were
of
not.
stuff. Gotcha. Is that typical? So it seems like something normally you get when you purchase.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that the Columbus facility, the seller was not wonderful for them to deal with. And he in fact raised the price. But yeah, they had done some investigation of both properties before they purchased them, but there were some things they just didn't see, like the roof leak in Evansville, and then they had the overruns because they had to put exam rooms in both facilities that are Medicaid compliant, and that had not been in their original construction plans.
Yeah, I guess I was just focused on the roof damage and everything else. It seems like there should be some recourse if, somebody signed off saying that this is okay. I would assume they would have somebody check it out beforehand. I guess that's just my experience. They kept buying properties without even really looking at them, and that's concerning. But
I know that they had both of them investigated before they purchased them. There were just some things that came up, like the boiler in Columbus. It was working, and it's still working. It's just not in great condition.
Any additional questions for Jerry? Jerry, we're ready for your resolution.
Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve a development fund loan in an amount not to exceed $185,000 to Volunteers of America of Indiana to be used to address cost overruns on the Columbus and Evansville Fresh Start facilities as recommended by staff.
Mike Schotmeyer, move for approval.
June Mitchell, second.
Andy Place, second.
All right, we have a motion and 2 seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Please welcome Rich Harcourt to discuss the reserve at White River LP bond recommendation. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you. Good morning, board. The purpose of this memo and the attached resolution is to request the approval for the issuance of the Series 2020 multifamily housing revenue notes, the reserve at White River LP project, not to exceed $26,780,000 and known as the bonds. We looked at this, or the board approved this in December of 19. And literally what we're doing is acting as the issuer of the tax exempt bonds at this time. We are a conduit issuer. There's no recourse at all to IHCDA. The project itself is a new construction of 210 age-restricted units on the west side of Indianapolis, and will be a 1 and 2 bedroom mix of units. Staff recommends the board approve the issuance of the Series 2020 multifamily housing revenue bonds pursuant to the attached resolution.
Board, are there any questions for Rich? Rich, I believe we're ready for your resolution.
Thank you. Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve issuance of the Series 2020 multifamily housing revenue bonds, parentheses, the reserve at White River LP project, close parentheses, pursuant to the attached resolution as recommended by staff.
Board, we have a
Mark
resolution
Pascal.
before us. Go ahead, Mark.
Mark Pascal, so moved.
Kelly Mitchell, second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Good. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Rich. And please welcome David Stewart to discuss the policy for board member electronic participation. Maybe we should have done this at the beginning. But thank you, David.
Thank you. Good morning, board.
Morning.
Well, the good thing is that the governor's executive order took care of that for us. And so what we're doing today is trying to put this in place for the future when hopefully all this is over with and we go forward as close to normal as we can. As you all know, the current IHCDA board meeting requirements set out in our section of the Indiana Code do not currently allow board members to participate in board meetings electronically. Today, I'm recommending adoption of a new policy that will allow the electronic participation per the policy guidelines. These guidelines are set forth in Indiana Code 5-14-1.5-3.6. And given that many of IHCDA's board meetings are now conducted at various locations throughout the state, physical attendance at some of these meetings can be difficult for board members who have other work-related business to take care of on the same day. All other requirements under the open door law will remain in effect for us. I also want to thank the Lieutenant Governor's Office and Mark Wallner from the Indiana Bond Bank for working with us on this. So the legal department of IHCDA would like to respectfully recommend that the board approve the policy for participation by the members of the IHCDA board of directors and board meetings by simultaneous electronic communication, and it's attached to your paperwork as Exhibit A. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
David and board, just kind of as a side note, when I was a state representative, I carried the legislation that allowed for boards and commissions to include in their bylaws or their policies a policy to allow electronic participation. And so, thank you. I think it's really positive that the board is considering this and hopefully will adopt this, because we do have board members that are from different parts of the state, and with us moving our meetings around the state to allow for local participation, it's not always convenient for people to attend. This policy would allow them to attend and to vote. Correct, David?
That is correct.
Okay. Are there any questions? Does the board have any questions how this policy would work?
This is June. No questions. I applaud you for going forward with this.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. The Lieutenant Governor and I talked about this after the last board meeting, and then I was able to work with her staff, and Mark Wallner over at the Indiana Bond Bank sent me some information about how their current policy worked, and then between the three of us, we were able to work on this. And I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor's Office for their assistance in this.
If there are no additional questions for David, we will consider your resolution now.
The legal department respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve the policy for participation by members of the IHCDA board of directors in board meetings by simultaneous electronic communication, attached hereto as Exhibit A, as recommended by staff.
Mike Schobmeyer, enthusiastically 180 miles away, move for approval.
June Midkiff, second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Please welcome Emily Krauser and Thomas Hartnett Russell to provide an Energy Assistance Program update. And there should be a PowerPoint presentation in your board packet. So welcome, Emily, and welcome, Thomas.
Hi, everybody. This is Emily Krauser. I'm the Director of Community Programs. It's nice to meet you all. And thanks for giving us some time today to talk about Liheap. In our presentation, it starts on page 20 of your board packet. We're just going to share a few of the basics about the Energy Assistance Program, and then talk a little bit about the history of where we've been over the last few years and where that puts us going over the next year or so. I also wanted to give a quick update. This program is really key for a lot of our communities here in Indiana, and I know is really helpful for families who are in crisis. And so that is one of the reasons that they're talking about in the current COVID-19 legislation, they're talking about adding $900 million in Liheap funding across the country, which is about 24% of what the nation gets annually in Liheap funding. So that will go quite a ways to help the families across the nation. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom to go through the slides that we have here, and then we're happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, thank you, Emily, and good morning, members of the board. This is Thomas Hartnett Russell. I am the Community Programs Manager for the Energy Assistance Program, and thank you for having us. So I'm going to begin with the meat of the presentation. This should be on page 21 of your board packet. And we're going to start with just a really high-level overview of Liheap. So the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program is funded by a block grant administered by the United States Department of Health and Human Services. The purpose of Liheap is to assist low-income households with the rising cost of home energy, with a goal of targeting the highest benefits towards households with the combination of the lowest income and the highest energy burden. And for Liheap purposes, energy burden is defined as the proportion of the annual income that goes towards those annual energy costs. Moving on to the next page, we are going to look at the last 3 years of Liheap design. Now, block grants are inherently flexible and provide a lot of latitude for states to build a program that fits the specific needs of its citizens. Over the past 3 years, IHCDA's Community Programs Division has adjusted its program design each year to better address the mission of Liheap and to better utilize the funding available to Indiana citizens. For the purpose of this presentation, what we're going to do is kind of take a high-level overview of the changes that we've made over the past 3 years, what the intended effects were of those changes, and what the actual effects appear to have been. So moving on to the next page, we're going to look at program year 2018. There were a number of changes in program year 2018 that the intended effects were all to increase the eligibility. So we allowed applicants to return multiple times in order to reach their maximum crisis benefit, whereas in the past, people were only allowed to return one time. We allowed people to receive the benefit if their utilities were included in the rent. We allowed people to receive a crisis benefit on prepaid services. We allowed applicants to receive benefits if the utility is in the name of a non-household member. We changed our income calculation method so that we were looking at only the most recent 3 months instead of a full 12 months. We excluded the sale of property in our definition of income because we saw that as too much of an assets test. And we also allowed applicants to deduct any child support that they paid out from their income. So moving on to program year 2019, we had one further change to increase that eligibility even further. And that was, we shifted from a model where our eligibility guideline was 150% of the federal poverty line. And we actually changed that to 60% of the state median income. And for most households, that resulted in an effective federal poverty level determination of, I want to say it's roughly 187% of the federal poverty level. So that definitely increased the base eligibility across the state. The remaining changes that we made in program year 2019 were to actually increase the benefit amount for the applicants who were approved. So we allowed funds to be used for connections and reconnection fees. We added an emergency repair and replace program for homeowners whose primary heating source was not functioning or not functioning properly. We provide an additional benefit called emergency services that was able to be used in cases of documented weather emergencies. We also increased the base matrix points for all income levels, and we increased the base electric benefit. And in the current program year 2020, we kind of had this philosophy of wanting to make fewer changes than we've had in previous years. We wanted to have more stability there, especially for the program staff who are administering it. So our changes were more limited, and we focused more on better addressing crisis and on targeting the key populations. So the changes that were intended to better address crisis included increasing the maximum total crisis benefit and applying the crisis benefit to the balance before the regular benefit to allow that regular benefit to go further. And as far as targeting key populations, we increased the matrix points for vulnerable households while simultaneously decreasing matrix points for clients where the heating is included in their rent. And we also eliminated an on-time incentive benefit. HHS's interpretation of that policy was that we were actually giving more benefit to people who were better able to pay their bills. So we took that to heart and eliminated that so that it would eliminate that appearance. And that brings us to a look at what actually happened as a result of all of these changes. And this is going to be on page 26 of your packet. So I've included program year 2016 there just as a baseline. So if you look at that chart, there are 3 lines. The orange line is the average regular benefit. The gray line is the average crisis benefit, and the yellow line is the average total benefit. And those are going to correspond with the y-axis on the left side of the chart. And then the blue bars are numbers of households served each program year, and those numbers are going to correspond with the right side y-axis. So the first thing that you will likely notice is that the average total benefit, we go up to 2018, and then we no longer have that. So we actually there's a consulting group called Apprise that works with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and all of the state grantees to take all the data that we give over to the federal government each year as part of our reporting and really takes it apart and does a deep dive analysis. And so they're the ones who actually extract the average regular benefit and the average crisis benefit based on how many of our total households actually received crisis. And so we typically get those reports from Apprise in roughly July or August of each year. And it's always going to be a year behind. So this past summer, we did receive our numbers for 2018, but the numbers for 2019 have not been processed yet. And obviously we're still in the middle of 2020, so we wouldn't have those numbers yet. But we are able to give kind of an estimate of our average total benefit just based on our raw numbers for those 2 years. So you see the numbers there. I do think that there are some interesting things to be seen here. Obviously, there's that the average crisis benefit has stayed more or less static from 2016 through 2018, while the average regular benefit, there was actually a drop off between 2016 and 2017. And I think that's when we were looking more at trying to increase the eligibility without looking at the actual benefit amount. The other thing, just anecdotally, is seeing that the average total benefit has actually dropped a bit from 2018 through 2020 in spite of the efforts that we made to increase the extra benefit based on based on the changes I talked about earlier. And I do think that those are largely an effect of the fact that we, over the past couple of years, we've actually gotten a lot better at expending all of our money during the winter and not carrying over to a summer program. To the point that we actually, last year for the first time, we saw some of our subgrantees actually running out of funds before the program was done. So I think what happened was people were still taking applications and still processing them, but a lot of these approved households were not actually able to receive a benefit just because of the lack of funds. So I think that had actually impacted the overall total average benefit, even though the people who received benefits by and large were getting larger benefits. You also see that large jump in the households served between 2018 and 2019. Honestly, with the numbers we're seeing so far in 2020, I do anticipate us topping our 2019 numbers in terms of approved households. I do actually want to share an update because I updated our numbers yesterday evening, and when I created this chart last week, we were in a holding pattern with a lot of our LSPs where they were out of funds and they were waiting for additional funds. Those funds did finally come through from Health and Human Services last Thursday, and I got the amendments out on Friday. And just in the past week, we've seen a large jump in the households served. The number I actually have that I generated yesterday was 109,594. So we are closing in already on where we were at the end of program year 2019. And just to bring us to the last slide here, where do we go from here? What we're looking at for future changes. So we're going to focus on being a cold weather state and trying to do the best to maximize the benefits we're giving out in the winter without necessarily having any summer program. We are having open conversations with our subgrantees about the program purpose and effectiveness. Essentially, we're having a discussion with them on what success looks like and how to best target our target populations. Seeking new ways of determining a household's energy burden, and as always, to assist low-income households with the rising cost of home energy. So I know I just threw a lot of information at you. I do want to thank you for your attention, and I think Emily and I are both happy to take any questions that anyone on the board may have.
Board, does anyone have any questions for Thomas or Emily? Thank you, Emily and Thomas, for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
At this time, we will hear from Jacob Seid, our Executive Director, on his update. Jacob?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Jake Seid, Executive Director at IHCDA. Before I jump into our response related to COVID-19, I first want to acknowledge and thank Lieutenant Governor for designating Daniela Jordan Gonzalez, who is IHCDA's Homeless Management Information Service Data Analyst, who now serves on the Indiana Commission for Hispanic and Latino Affairs. We're really fortunate to have someone like Daniela being able to participate on the Indiana Commission for Hispanic Latino Affairs. And I guess at our first meeting, she made such a great impression that she was named the secretary of the commission. So I just want to thank Lieutenant Governor, and congratulate Daniela already for her active engagement with the commission. So. Obviously, we all are concerned and with the COVID-19 and IHCDA. I want to walk you through our response and what we have done and where we are as an agency as it relates to this response, emergency response. So first off, IHCDA has continued to operate without any disruptions. On March 13th, Friday, I informed the agency that we would begin working remotely on Monday, March 16th. our team immediately began providing training to our 100 employees on utilizing technology to work remotely. And with that, I want to thank Adam Lawson, who's the Director of Financial Operations, Dennis Mann, who's our Business Systems Consultant, and Jonathan Bolts, our Systems Administrator, who began immediately working within hours to ensure that all of our employees were ready to begin to work remotely on Monday. And they worked tirelessly. They put together multiple different trainings immediately for all of our employees to get them prepared. Not only was it a software, but there's a hardware challenge, making sure that all of our staff have the appropriate laptops and everything like that. I also just want to mention that while we really are now leaning on our technology, we are doing that without an IT director. We have a vacancy with that. So the 3 individuals that I just named really has stepped up to deliver to ensure that IHCDA's operations were never compromised. So since March 16th, I have issued 2 notices to keep our partners and the public up to date on IHCDA's operations. These messages go out to over 10,000 people who are signed up to receive our electronic communications. And I just want to mention just one thing here. And in all of those communications, I've always included my desk phone number and my email account so that the public can contact me at any time, specifically if they had any concerns or any complaints about our response time to our partners and our constituents during this time. Our level of customer service has always been high, but during an emergency like this, our level of customer service has to be higher. And I just want to report to the board that I have not received one complaint from the public in terms of our responses to from our team to our partners or to our constituents. And our commitment to that is to respond within 24 hours, whether that be an email or a phone conversation. And actually, what I have received is a lot of compliments from our partners that have just reached out to me and said, thank you for keeping us current and up to date on the operations of IHCDA and the work that we're doing. And that also includes our social media post. With that, IHCDA last week went into engagement with our stakeholders. We began by reaching out to our stakeholders to facilitate over 25 stakeholder weekly calls to listen to their concerns, their challenges, and the opportunities that are being presented across our state. At last count, we have engaged over 400 stakeholders, individuals who are participating on these calls. We are logging these opportunities daily, and we are elevating them up to the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor as we begin to see major concerns or trends across our state. So I just want to compliment our team for really being engaged and really stepping forward during the last 2 weeks. On a program side, I want to give you a couple of updates on where some of our programs are that have been impacted. On Friday, March 20th, we instructed all of our weatherization production to be suspended. We've also suspended any physical inspections that we were currently doing. On our monitoring side and our real estate side, we are now doing only desktop monitorings. On our physical inspections, occasionally we will receive a complaint from a resident who raises concern with health and safety. And as we receive those complaints, we are reviewing them on a case-by-case basis to determine whether or not a physical on-site inspection needs to be handled. On March 24th, the real estate team also suspended rehab work for our owner-occupied rehab program, our ramp-up program, and our lead programs as well. On Community Service Block Grant, which goes through our community action agencies, we allowed to double the amount of administrative funding for the quarter to support staff salaries and technology needs to work remotely for our community action agencies. Now to the governor's executive orders, specifically 20-06, which was issued it required that temporary prohibition on eviction and foreclosure. And immediately when that order was issued, IHCDA's real estate team went into act and issued a notice with additional resources for our partners. The directive also required IHCDA to partner with the Indiana Department of Financial Institutions to promote housing stability. And with that, within an hour, Tom Fite and I had been in conversation. Tom is the executive director of the Indiana Department of Financial Institutions, and we began those conversations and began immediately working together on ensuring that we can promote housing stability across our state. Our first meeting with our teams was on Monday of this week, and our second meeting is scheduled for today. The executive order also instructed all public housing authorities to extend housing deadlines for housing assistance, which IHCDA fully embraced and has also shared this with our public housing authorities partners as well. On the finances, like the private sector, IHCDA is financially self-sufficient. Unlike a state agency, IHCDA does not rely on the state of Indiana to support our operations. We created a 2020 budget based on projected revenue and expenses. Our revenue is primarily driven by our single-family mortgage production. And last week, we saw a drastic decrease in liquidity for our single-family products, which will have an adverse effect on our revenue. This week, we have seen the market bounce back. However, there remains a lot of uncertainty in the single-family market. We will be challenged to meet our revenue projections, and our finance team, led by our Chief Financial Officer, Rich Harcourt, and our Accounting Director and Controller, Vinya Dunbar, are reevaluating our 2020 budget with new projections. With that being said, as we continue to have a better understanding of the financial impact COVID-19 is having on our single-family production, we anticipate the need to reconvene our board's budget committee prior to our April 23rd board meeting. So that is, once we have a better understanding of where our projections in terms of our revenues are going to be within the next week or so, we may need to reconvene our board budget committee meeting. With that, things are obviously moving really quickly. And I know we have a lot of the public who's also in this listening. So if it's okay, Madam Chair, I would like to just share a little bit of information which is coming across my desk within the last 20 minutes as it relates to Congress efforts to address COVID-19 in terms of the stimulus bill. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So this is just coming across my desk right now, and I just want to highlight a few of what's going on in terms of appropriations, and specifically the HUD programs. Looks like right now that has passed the House and headed to the Senate, there are over $12 billion in new appropriations for HUD programs. $5 billion for Community Development Fund, $4 billion with the Homeless Assistance Grants, the Emergency Solutions Grant. IHCDA does administer the Emergency Solutions Grant. $1.25 billion in tenant-based rental assistance. IHCDA does administer Indiana's tenant-based rental assistance program. $1 billion in project-based rental assistance, which IHCDA also administers. $685 million for Public Housing Operating Fund. $300 million for Native American programs. $65 million for housing opportunities for persons with age, which IHCDA does administer the state's HOPWART program. $50 million for housing for elderly, Section 202, and then $15 million housing for persons with disabilities, Section 811, which IHCDA also does administer for the state of Indiana. So with those, that $12 billion, it does appear that IHCDA will be could be receiving some additional dollars as it relates to COVID-19. Obviously, these are unprecedented need across our state to respond to the pandemic situation and the emergency disaster or declaration that we've seen. Obviously, that's just come across my desk within the last 20 minutes. So this situation is very fluid, and there are concerns and challenges that are meeting the state and IHCDA and at a national level immediately. So I would like to ask for the board to consider providing the executive director of IHCDA, some delegation authority to ensure that IHCDA remains nimble and flexible in deploying our resources, our staff, and any new funding that we may have come before our next board meeting, which is April 23rd. I think there are also great opportunities for IHCDA to partner or engage and potentially assist with other state agencies like we are with IDFI, potentially with FSSA, to support the work as it relates to those that are being impacted from COVID-19. I would like to encourage the board to at least consider thinking about today, and I know this is on the last minute, however, things are changing immediately as we're during our board meeting. If the board would be interested, we do have a delegation of policy that the board approved that's specific to for the executive director to make awards on formula allocations. I think it might be appropriate for the board to do this in a way that's related to COVID-19. I would be happy to give the board updates monthly as we continue either to allocate these COVID-19 dollars or identify partnerships and with other state or federal agencies. I should also mention that we are in constant contact with all of our federal agencies that IHCDA receives funds from. And that goes beyond just the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. We also, as was mentioned, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the U.S. Department of Energy, the U.S. Department of Treasury. All of those federal agencies are IHCDA's partners, and we have been and continue to be in constant contact with them as we seek further guidance and trying to be flexible and nimble with not only our programs, but also our policies. So with that being said, I would like to encourage the board to have a conversation about a delegation authority to the IHCDA executive director to approve grants, contracts, memorandums of understandings, or other written agreements for funding obligations or just partnerships with other state and federal agencies.
All right, can you read?
Andy Place, so moved.
All right.
Sorry,
Is there any? No, that's quite all right. I was going to, so it's been moved and we will do a second, but can you just word how you would want that motion to read on the record?
Yes. When this is just, so here's what I would propose. Authority be given to the executive director, similar to contract delegation authority to approve funds via grant, contract or memorandum of understanding of other agencies. Written agreements obviously will be required for all funding obligations. Request board's permission to allocate dollars from IHCDA funding sources for other than designated purposes, redeployment of funds, and from currently unobligated IHCDA funds to respond to COVID-19.
And with that, we have a motion on the table, but are there any questions from the board members regarding this?
Is there, Andy Place again, a time limit on this, Jake? Till the next meeting, do you say?
Yeah, I would say till the next meeting. Obviously, yes. Yeah, it seems like these things are coming at us really quickly, and I don't know how quickly they're coming. There may be some prolonged delays with some of the federal dollars, but we do have an open line of communication with our federal partners, and they have been great to work with, and they have been very responsive. And I assume that that's going to continue. And when they say move, we're going to have to be ready to move with our dollars, especially if we get this some of these resources that are being that were approved this morning by the House.
So it would be the authority we'd be granting you as the executive director of IHCDA would be in effect to our next board meeting, which is what date?
April 23rd.
So this authority that we would delegate to you would be effective up to or through February or through April 22nd or through April 23rd. Okay.
I would say April 23rd. And if we want to extend it, I would be okay to extending it. But the next 30 days are going to the next 4 weeks are just going to be extremely important for us to deploy our resources or also enter into any memorandum of understandings or interagency agreements.
Sure. And are you seeing these to be a lot? I mean, when you do something, is it possible to alert the board that, we have, done this with these funds, or is it going to be so many so quickly that wouldn't be reasonable?
No, I'd be happy to give the board an update either when the action's taken or maybe on each Friday at the end of the week. What's board's whatever the board would like. I'll be happy to give that update as immediately as I can.
And Madam Chair, this is Mark Pascal. You kind of hit my thought. You know, as you go through it, IHCDA executive team in the past has been terrific. And I mean, they should be applauded for keeping us into the loop, especially when IFA, when it's been in terms of financing. And I would just ask during these stressful times if we do award this delegation that they continue to do that. So maybe it's more of, they don't have to reach out to the whole entire board, but at least before any actions taken, especially like with long-term funding or something of that nature, that they reach out to the appropriate people on the board who have the expertise in that area to make sure that any long-term commitments are discussed prior. And that's all I'd ask. But they've done great in the past, so just keep that up.
All right. So is that agreeable, Jake?
Yes. And that was the intent.
Certainly. I thought it was.
Mike Schobmeyer, I would only point out of being mobile, we're getting overloaded with emails. So if you want to keep the board updated, I would say with, every 10 days would be, in a summary, Jake, would be more than adequate given this overload we're seeing as leaders. And then the other thing, I want to make sure I understand, Jake, that this is primarily granting this broad authority to go obtain grants and other funds so that we can receive more money for the state of Indiana, correct?
That is correct. And there are some of these dollars could be reimbursed to IHCDA through the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So FEMA, some of these dollars may actually be able to be reimbursed back to IHCDA depending on how we use them and how we structure them and who we partner with.
Mike Schobmeyer again, I understand that. I'm just doing this for the public to understand. We're not giving Jake a blank check. We're giving Jake authority to go secure for Hoosiers as much money as possible from all sources, federal, grants, and elsewhere.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, this is David Stewart, General Counsel.
Yes, sir.
I had talked to Jake about this. If you would like, if you guys vote on this today and approve this today, we could submit to you a written resolution that would outline what has been talked about today. And then if for some reason someone has a problem with what's in there or something needs to be added or changed, we could do that. And that way we have something in writing showing what's been approved. And then at the next board meeting, if that's the time period, we can make the adjustments at that time.
I think that would be reasonable. That sounds responsible. So if you could, Jake, read the authority that you are seeking today from the board, and if you would also include perhaps a report to the board every 10 days, and then consultation with the appropriate board members on a as-needed basis.
Okay. Do you want me to read that again, or?
Yes, please.
Request board's permission to provide authority given to the executive director, similar to the contract delegation authority, to approve funds, a contract memorandum of understandings, and written agreements for other state, federal, local partners, and to allocate dollars from IHCDA funding sources for other than designated purpose for redeployment of funds and from currently unobligated IHCDA resources to respond to COVID-19.
Any place my original motion to approve is fine.
All right. Is there a second?
This is June, I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And then we will expect a report every 10 days, and you will, of course, consult with the appropriate board members on any as needed.
Yes.
Is there
Thank you, Board.
anything else?
Yeah,
Here, Laura?
if it's okay, I'd like to make a few closing comments, and I also just want to remind the board, our next board meeting is currently scheduled for April 23rd in Lafayette at the H38 property, which is part of our Moving Forward initiative, and we're also going to have a grand opening. However, we've been in conversations with the developer, Real America, and the not-for-profit organization Area 4, and they understand the current situation and would be supportive if we made a decision to cancel our board meeting at their location, and then look maybe potentially for another opportunity later down the road to have a board meeting on their site. But I just want to make the board aware that we have been in conversations with our host on April 23rd, and they would be supportive, just like today's meeting, which was supposed to be in Richmond, both very understanding and supportive of our decisions to unfortunately cancel our board meetings and change our locations. So I just wanted to brief the board on that. And then lastly, I just want to make a couple of closing comments. You know, I first want to acknowledge the entire IHCDA team. They have embraced the challenges of continuing to deliver the highest level of customer service by staying focused on our mission to provide housing opportunities, promote self-sufficiency, and strengthen our communities. Our operations, they've never stopped. Our partners expected us to lead, and we have. Our partners have expected us to remain honest and transparent, and we are continuing to exceed their standards. So I am just so proud to be part of a group of public servants who are truly dedicated to our state and IHCA's mission. So with that, Lieutenant Governor, Madam Chair, I just want to thank you for your leadership. I want to thank our board's commitment in giving me the opportunity to continue to serve in this role. So with that, that's my update this month.
This is Andy Place. I have a question. The resolution we approved today, do you want us to sign that, scan that back to you? What should we do there?
General Counsel, do you have a recommendation?
Yes, what we can do, since this was done a little differently than we did everything else, what we can do is that we can basically do this the same way that we do a bond resolution, where we can type it out. It's already been approved. We'll notate that on the document and then send it around for signature. If that works for everybody. If Madam Chair has no problem with that. Does anyone have any other business? Pardon?
Is there any objections to doing it that way? If not, is there any further business to come before the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mike Schotmeyer, so moved.
Andy Place, second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. We stand adjourned. Thank you, board, for your service, and we will be back in touch. Be safe and be healthy.